Think about your favorite story. Replay it in your mind, starting from the beginning, where all the characters are introduced, the setting they live in is described and presented to you, the world and its physical, societal, and moral rules, however strange or familiar, are constructed. Now move on to the middle. Here the conflict is made clearer, and each of the characters' struggles are outlined. Recall their roles in the story. Was the main character the hero, the villain, or somewhere in between? What exactly determines that? How did other characters support or hurt them? What lessons did they teach the main character, or vice versa? And how did they come to their conclusions? What influenced their decision-making? What was the conflict they had to face, and what does it mean for the world around them? Now visualize the end. What changed? Did they address the conflict? Are they closer to or farther away from their goals? How did the characters themselves change? What lessons, if any, do they take away from their journey? What does the future look like for them, for their relationships, for the world at large? What is their legacy? You most likely have an answer for some, if not all, of these questions. Odds are you know your favorite story from start to finish, with a complete rundown of the lore, the characters, their relationships, their growth, their faults, their actions, and the consequences of all their decisions on other characters, their own journey, and the world around them. You've perhaps even thought of alternate endings, plot twists, or sudden changes that could have resulted from just one deviation in the story. By now, you probably reflect on the genius of the story's creation. You so passionately love this story precisely because of its complexity, because you could talk for hours and hours about everything I told you to think about when asked about your favorite story. Now, think about an event in history. Replay it in your mind, starting with the beginning, where all the characters are introduced, the setting they lived in is described and presented to you, the world and its physical, societal, and moral rules, however strange or familiar, are constructed. Now move on to the middle. Here the conflict is made clearer, and each of the characters' struggles are outlined. Recall their roles in the story. Was the main character the hero, the villain, or somewhere in between? What exactly determines that? How did other characters support or hurt them? What lessons did they teach the main character, or vice versa, and how did they come to their conclusions? What influenced their decision-making? What was the conflict they had to face, and what does it mean for the world around them? Now visualize the end. What changed? Did they address the conflict? Are they closer to or further away from their goals? How did the characters themselves change? What lessons, if any, do they take away from their journey? What does the future look like for them, their relationships, for the world at large? And what is their legacy? If you've been taught history in a traditional sense, you probably didn't even care to think about history this way. Maybe you weren't allowed to. History to you was a series of test bubbles you needed to fill in, or half-baked answers to write out in order to satisfy the formulaic approach an overworked teacher threw on your desk or to your student email so that they can meet a quota. In fact, you hate history precisely because of its lack of complexity, a perceived shallow dullness that permeates seemingly every historical event. To you, history is as dead as the pages it's printed on. And maybe deep down, you want it to stay that way. History can be comfortable and manageable and simple and textbook. After all, the world is already complicated and overwhelming. Why delve into something that reinforces that fear, especially when it also affects the formulaic way you might currently look at the world? Why reflect upon everything I told you to think about when I asked you about an event in history. Now, think about your own life. Replay it in your mind, starting with the beginning, where all the characters are introduced, the setting you live in is described and presented to you, the world and its physical, societal, and moral rules, however strange or familiar, are constructed. Move on to the middle. Here, the conflict is made clearer, and each of the characters' struggles are outlined, including your own. Recall the roles in your story. Do you think of yourself as the hero, the villain, or somewhere in between? What exactly determines that? How did other characters support or hurt you? What lessons did they teach you, or vice versa? And how did all of you come to your conclusions? What influenced their and your decision making? What was or presently is the conflict you all faced or currently face? And what does it mean for the world around you? Now visualize today, right now. What has changed? Did you address the conflict? Are you closer to or farther away from your goals? How did the people around you change? What lessons do you take away from your journey? What does the future look like for you, the people around you, your relationships, and the world at large? What do you want your legacy to be? You most likely are either curious, uncomfortable, or anxious about the answers to these questions. Maybe you don't have an answer just yet or never will. I'm not looking for an answer, because the point of this exercise wasn't to elicit a certain feeling from you. It definitely wasn't to persuade you to adore history as much as I do. Some people will never enjoy the study of history, and fewer still will preach to you about the lessons learned from it and what it means to their lives. The point of this video, and by extension this channel, is to encourage you to view history like you would your favorite story. You know your favorite story so thoroughly because of the way you view it, and you view it in the way that you do because of the questions you ask from it. You aren't bound by limitations or test bubbles or quizzes or grades, and its barriers to understanding probably are nowhere as steep as those you may have to climb in your own lives every day. On the contrary, characters in your favorite story may serve as models towards overcoming those barriers. Their trials, tribulations, and triumphs are inspirational to you, and the joys, happiness, heartaches, bitterness, resentment, frustrations, and determination they show are what you hope to find in yourself. Maybe they are even what you thought about when I asked you to think about your own life. The root of the word history derives from the Greek verb to know. The Latin word historia, in its intended form, meant not just inquiry or the act of seeking knowledge, but also the knowledge gained from that questioning. It's no coincidence historia shared its meaning with story. Your favorite story, events in history, and most importantly, your life is worth knowing about. Discovering tools and practicing skills that unlock this knowledge can open your world up in countless ways. History, like movies, books, or television, is merely an avenue for this inquiry to take place. I hope that this channel can introduce these tools and skills to you, and that in time, you may utilize these tools and skills in your own life. Because history is the story of humanity, you included. And perhaps understanding history better can also help us understand our own stories and, yes, even our own favorite stories.